The Manila Times will be receiving a certificate of recognition and an exquisitely designed trophy. Once again, let us welcome the Manila Times, represented by its president and CEO, Mr. Dante Ang II.
RCM President Bobby Joseph, and of course the chairman of today's awards, Amado Valdez, and of course the other members of the Rotary Club of Manila. Thank you very much for this award, which I humbly accept today on behalf of the Manila Times. I'd like to extend my congratulations to the other winners today, and a shout out to my friends who are here: Echu from the Star, Anton from Business Mirror, Sir Sol, Sir Rolly, and of course Gov Sani Coloma. Congratulations to the other winners. Doing our job during the pandemic has not been easy, as all of my colleagues here will attest. In fact, we've had to go through not only the threat of getting COVID, but of course the economic burden also of just trying to put out the paper every day. It hasn't been easy, as I said, but thankfully for the support of our readers, our advertisers, and of course recognitions like the one given today by the Rotary Club Manila, help inspire us to continue to do our job. And rest assured that we will keep on doing this day to day, as the Manila Times has been doing so since its founding in 1898. I'd like to again thank the Rotary Club of Manila. The last time we were here was in 2017, 2018 Journalism Awards, where we were given the Newspaper of the Year. And I'd like to note also that I think it was believed in the 1960s, so when the Manila Times was also the first recipient of those awards from the Rotary Club of Manila. I'm always delighted to be in the company of fellow Rotarians. I am, as you know, a member of the Rotary Club of Makati North in District 3830. So greetings to you all. Congratulations to my colleagues, and mabuhay ang Rotary Club ng Manila.
Okay, good morning. Hey guys, good morning. And yes, we'd like to greet each other. But again, before we proceed, we'd like to send our condolences to the family of our former President, Pinoy. And again, a great job, Mr. President. So, let's hear it, Mr. Kernan. Kamusta? Maayong buntag sa imo, tanan.
Maayong buntag, Philippines, the world. Salamat for watching us today. Really our pleasure to serve you and through our content, no?
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's hear it from our guest today. Alam mo, yan na, tawagin na natin sa camera. Yan na, si Mr. Dante Francis Klink ang II. Okay, nakuha ko rin yung pangalan niya. Full
Morning,
name.
Butch. Morning, Kanan.
Good morning, Dan. How do we call it? Klink. Okay, Klink na lang.
Klink.
Okay. Siguro si Klink may want to tell us more about how you all started Manila Times. As you said, congratulations for getting the Patria 2021 awards.
Congratulations, Klink.
Thank you. I was cringing rewatching that video. I don't like watching myself. But salamat. Thank you.
Salamat, and really proud Rotarian of Makati North and District 3830. Do I get it right, Mr. President?
That's correct.
Kernan?
And our next president will be none other than Kernan Motomul.
Ayan,
Glad to serve
talagang
our club
yan.
and the district
Yan.
with the help of course, Klink.
Of course, we'll be behind you, as we say, but way, way, way behind you.
Thank you. I'm
Okay.
touched.
Sige. So, magbobola na naman tayo dito eh. Okay. So anyway, before we do that, Klink, tell us our audience. We have a lot of audience right now following us. The Manila Times, or they say the Times, the longest English newspaper in Asia or the country. So tell us more about
In Asia,
Manila
yeah.
Times. Yeah.
Well, first of all, good morning again, Butch and Kernan, and thank you for having me on your show. Congratulations on putting Usapan Business together, and I look forward to future collaborations between you two. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to tell you more about the Manila Times. As you said, we're old. I wasn't there in the beginning, and unlike what Kernan has been telling you, my hair is white, but I'm not that old. But the Manila Times was founded the same year the Philippine Republic was proclaimed, 1898. The proclamation was June. The founding of Manila Times was in October that year. And I think of all of the newspapers in the Philippines, probably the Manila Times has the most interesting history. There are many historical figures associated with it. I think the first one that we still remember, of course, is Manuel Quezon. Manuel Quezon was part of, I believe, of a group of businessmen who had owned the Manila Times before he became president, of course. You mentioned the recent passing of our former president, Noynoy Aquino. His father was a former correspondent of the Manila Times during the Korean War. In fact, he lied about his age because he would not have been allowed to go to a war front. This was the war in Korea, and the joke was that it was a good thing that Ninoy was not a good journalist. Otherwise, he may not have gone into politics. But um, and then there are of course many others. These are just a few. But Manila Times has an up and down history over the years. It closed shop twice. I think 10 years before World War, the 1930s, mid 1930s, it closed down for some reason. I believe there had some labor issues, and then it was revived after World War II by the same family that owned it. This is the Rosas family, of course, of Don Chino Rosas fame, and of course of the Inquirer fame, because that's the family that are related to Don Chino. Um, their flagship publication was the Tribune. It was part of the TVT, the Tribune, Taliba, and La Vanguardia. Taliba, of course, is the Philippine newspaper. La Vanguardia was the Spanish newspaper. But there was some controversy with the Rosas family during World War II regarding whether or not the Japanese occupiers bought the Tribune or had forcibly co-opted the paper to be its news organ. And so after World War II, the Tribune had this tainted reputation. So the Rosses naturally didn't want to revive that paper, and so they brought back the Manila Times, which had been existing as only a Sunday newspaper back then. That's why we kept the Sunday Times as the name, as part of a nod to that historical a role that the paper played. So after World War II, that became the start of what propelled Manila Times to be the premier newspaper in Asia. There was a time I'm told by the Ross's family member, that even Rupert Murdoch came to Manila to look into the possibility of buying the Manila Times. But of course, the Constitution prohibits it, but it was interesting to note that fact. And then, of course, we were shut down again during martial law beginning in 1972, and was not revived until EDSA. And after the EDSA revolution, newspaper changed hands for a while. until we came into the picture in 2001. They say that we own the paper, but I think to be more honest with ourselves, we're more like stewards of the Manila Times. The Manila Times existed before us, even though our family had been in the publishing business in the 70s with small weekly publications and magazines. But really, we're stewards of the brand, and for me, this has been a constant reminder that we need to live up to the legacy of the brand of the Manila Times, which had been around, as you said, since 1898. Has seen virtually every key milestone of our country's history, has been associated with key political historical figures in our country. And so I'm conscious that we're not merely doing this for our own business interest, but also because we have a responsibility to uphold the work and the reputation of the brand that has been established even before we came into the picture. So maybe I'll just stop there. And I don't know. You said only 30 seconds, but I think I've exceeded that exceeded that time. But I'd be glad to answer questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Klink. I like what you said earlier. You're the steward. You're the steward of the legacy, and really, that's such very touching words. Those are powerful words. Talagang galing eh. Kasi though you
I
don't
was
did not.
enjoying.
Oh,
I was
I mean,
enjoying listening to Klink. Really
oo.
glad to hear the history of.
Kasi a lot. I like the icon of the newsboy.
Yeah, the newsboy.
Okay, that is really a salute to the four frontliners, di ba? I mean, these
Yeah,
are the newsboys who I know who deliver by bike, by walking.
yeah,
In fact, I remember when I was a kid, there was this newsboy who delivers to us in our Quezon City, and he became one of the marathon, the bike. I think Manila Times sponsored him. He became a champion. Alam mo, yung bicycle marathon.
Hmm.
I'm so proud
No,
because,
there were so many interesting people who were, in their early days, newsboys or newsgirls. Supreme Court Justice Artur Panginiban, I think he used to be, he told me once that he was a Manila Times newsboy when he was young.
Wow.
Even our present Secretary of Education, si Leonor Briones, often reminds me that when she was a girl in Dumaguete, she would, hey, Manila Times. She would sell Manila Times when she was a kid. I sold, I did not sell Manila Times, but I was a newsboy myself, but I was selling my dad's newspaper magazine, but only to my
yeah.
aunties and uncles and our neighbors who could not say no to me.
Yeah, so again, kita mo yan na Kernan, nagkaroon ng bagay ng pagiging
Yeah.
entrepreneurship, and really there's really something that Manila Times really carry. But tell me, Klink, marami
Hmm.
nagsasabi nga wala na raw, patay na raw ang newspaper ngayon dahil because of the age of digitalization. Tama
Hmm.
ba 'yon, Klink? What's your stand on that?
Well, we've been hearing that, for decades, beginning, I think, with the, popularization of the internet, diba? And then lately, in the late 90s of social, well, the search engines and then social media. But I'm confident that newspapers will survive, and I've given at least three reasons why. And one is newspapers have a long history of survival. So it's been around since the invention of the printing press, 16th century. It survived the introduction of radio when people said, "Oh, people will just listen na lang; they won't read." But newspapers evolved, diba? And then in the post-war period, TV became popular, networks became established. So they said, "Oh, people will watch the news," and true, many newspapers died, and I was a victim of that because my first job out of college was to work for an American newspaper in Oklahoma, and we were an evening paper. And so our paper came out in the afternoon. But when the 6 p.m. Newscast of the TV networks became so popular, nobody read evening papers anymore. But still, newspapers survive. Now, they say now with social media that there is a threat of substitution. Um, but we're not seeing that. In fact, what we're seeing instead is that there are many more people reached by newspapers. In fact, Manila Times before we had to contend with how many people we can reach, how many people we can deliver the paper to, put our physical paper in their hands. And that was limited to 200,000 to 300,000 people daily, right? But with the internet, we're able to reach 5 million plus daily. Now, and this is the same with Inquirer, the same with the Star, the same with the New York Times. They're having to reach far more people now because of the internet. And so the problem is that I think they're more popular now. The problem for the news businesses is monetization. So how we monetize that new audience. So in that sense, so I think I see newspapers thriving. I see them trying to come up with solutions on how to monetize. So I think they will find a way to survive. And so the track record of the newspaper is one point. The other thing, the reason why I'm confident that influencers and social media will not necessarily replace newspapers is because newspapers are a business and people forget this. So we invest in coverage, and it's something that an individual will find difficult to match. So take for example the funeral services for a former president. I must have. This morning. I'm monitoring our staff. We must have maybe 5 people covering covering the services. We have, of course, a photographer, a reporter, and then we have other people talking to former associates of the former president, and there are a number of people, and then of course they don't work for free. I have to pay them salary, or else they will complain to me, right? So and so the second reason why we will not be replaced is because we are a business and it requires capital investment that I think individual influencers will be unable to. And I think the third reason is that there remains to be a need for newspapers. Now, what is that need? The need, of course, is I think quite elusive. But I think it would be related to the need to know what's going on, to need to understand what's happening in the world, and need remains. And I think because of our resources, not just Manila Times, but the news organization's resources, I think we're better able to serve that need more than an individual or smaller outfits with fewer resources. Right. So if you're looking to see what's happening in the country, to use just an economic explanation, right? So for you, you would have a smaller transaction cost going to Manila Times or Inquirer or the Star or GMA kasi andun na lahat, right? Whereas if you were to rely on an influencer, you have to look at Fernan, then you have to look at Butch, and you have to look at so many, right? Even with the algorithm, it's not convenient, and so I think in a sense, news organizations have this model that it's people have found convenient to access information. And so let me just finally say that while I'm supremely confident that newspapers survive, I think the greater challenge is to determine which newspapers will survive, right? So if you look at the newspapers 100 years ago, many of them are not here. And certainly, if you look at the look of the newspapers even 50 years ago, it's totally different from what you see today. And so this is some of the things that Manila Times was trying to adapt to because of what's happening. We don't see ourselves as a mere newspaper publisher anymore. We see ourselves as a media company that's able to deliver content on paper, on video, on sound, and if it's invented later on how we can have VR in news delivery, we'll probably go into that too, as I'm sure my competitors will do the
Yeah.
same.
So, Kernan, yeah, Kernan, ikaw digital tech support ka.
Hernan
How
is
do you,
the
yeah,
idol and he's the
the
leader
idol of the
in
tech support yan eh. Okay.
you know
How
No,
do you see yourself now as part of the
yeah,
digital world and Manila Times and being an entrepreneur,
good
Kernan?
question. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So, how do you see now yourself? For example, you're now in tech support, you're now
Ah,
digitalization, and what Klink is saying now about business, mixing the paper and the business with the whole broad, the whole internet world.
well, as Klink mentioned, it's you need to innovate. Like I was watching the Manila Times yung YouTube channel. Yeah, I'm actually subscribed. So so
Thank you.
when you see relevant information, or when you update yourself such information, um, you tend to get away from the website of Manila Times, focusing now on the video content, which is in the morning. That's my routine. I have subscribed channels in YouTube. I don't really watch television anymore. No, sa YouTube na ako. I pay the premium YouTube channel, no, yung premium account. So it's all about innovation, and I think it's a good way for any organization to be on that level. Like us as a company, we're continuously developing like internal assets, na digital assets. What is a digital asset? So basically it's content. One thing is content. One thing can be your application or a software that you sell globally. So when you have this content, you own the content. Later on, it can be syndicated, no, to different media channels or what, but you own it. So basically, you can monetize it later on. So yeah, so it's all about adapting on the times. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, Kernan brought up an important point, because I think one major change that I've seen since my time with this newspaper. When you ask my dad, who's my boss, but if you asked him 20 years ago when we came into this, ano yung business namin, he would point you to the physical paper, right?
Mhm.
And most publishers, all publishers will do that. But now you ask me what our business is, and like Hernan said, our business is content. And so if you change your mindset about what your product is, right, then the means of delivery now take on a different, diba? You unshackle you now consider other options for delivering that product. In this case, content. That's why we've gone to video, audio, but we haven't given up on print, because
correct. Yeah.
I think there's we're trying to serve several segments, so that's just in recognition of some segments that we want to retain.
Correct. But I think, Klink, you really planned out in advance, and I think this is part of being an entrepreneur. You really planned out, and like you're in different all social media. I mean, name it. You get Manila Times in YouTube, in podcasts, and you try to listen to Spotify. You get Manila Times there. What made you as a CEO think this way so far ahead? I mean, what is it in your personality? Yan kumbaga,
Ah,
alam mo naman eh. Alam mo naman
well,
pagiging Rotarian nito, yan sinasabi nyo, is it the truth? Is it fair? Oh, sige Klink. What
well,
is that?
uh, I think my advantage is, I'm friends with the other publishers now. I'm friends with Miguel in the Star, and Emil in the Bulletin, and even Sandy at the Inquirer. We're about the same age. I'm older than Emil, but younger than Miguel and Sandy. So we sort of talk about the business, and I think among us, I think the advantage is that we grew up with a newspaper. So we, at an early age, as I said, I started selling newspapers and magazines, and that's my summers were spent in the press room, in the printing press area. So we had the benefit, I think, of seeing the transition, from 30 years ago to today. So my sense was that things are changing rapidly, and if you want to have shade from the sun, you can't plant a tree today and expect it to supply you the shade. You have to plant it maybe 5, 10 years from now, and then it'll grow, and then it'll provide you shade. So that was my thinking, and we were always on the lookout for things to improve on and to try. I have to confess to you, it wasn't easy. It seems like it was wise now looking back, diba? But back then, it was a constant struggle for resources. Do we spend money on developing video, or do we increase the salary of the reporters? I mean, and I don't think that we were wise enough to say we foresaw it coming, and then here we are, we're prepared. I think it was more like we were I was trying new things. I was being shut down often, but kept on trying, kept on, and not all of the things that we thought about worked. And then I should give that also to my dad and my team, and to have that wisdom to tell me that, well, it's not going to work. And indeed, many of the things didn't work. But we just kept on trying, and then I think everyone was surprised by the pandemic. And then when the pandemic came, it was all of a sudden impossible for us to deliver in the newspaper to Visayas and Mindanao, because all the flights were canceled. Even our land deliveries to North Luzon, Southern Luzon, all of a sudden had to go through checkpoints, and in many LGUs they couldn't get through because of the quarantine, right? And it was just I think fortunate for us that a couple of years before this we had been developing a digital edition. So the digital edition is an exact replica of the paper. So this is what we started pushing. Of course, this website continued. It's now carrying premium content, meaning content that's not available in print. And then we started rolling out, because in the SEA Games, because we were experimenting with video and audio, we hired a video editor. And I didn't tell my dad anymore, because if I had told him, he would have said, "No, we cannot. We don't have the money to buy. We're a newspaper. Why are you hiring a video editor?" So we hired a video editor. Actually, three. We have one full time and then two part time, just to have a different coverage of the SEA Games, so that we have the print stories, video stories, and then that mechanism was in place. So when the pandemic came, we were able to scale it quite easily. So as you said, we're on YouTube. We're on the version of YouTube in Europe, which is Daily Motion. We're on Spotify. We're on other platforms. We have the digital edition, which is the exact replica. So we were able to reach people in different segments. So that's how we look at it. The website will appeal to a certain segment. The paper itself will appeal to a different segment. The digital edition and that's our thinking. So I don't think we were wise. We were just, I think, persistent in trying to try new things, and seeing what will stick. Right? And it just so I think timing and luck also played into the fact that we're in all, we're trying to be ubiquitous, and thank you for acknowledging that we're in many places, but it wasn't a I would say by design. It was, I think, more luck had a lot to do with it.
Yeah. So, sabi sa'yo, Colonel, magaling talaga Manila Times, no?
Yeah, refreshing.
Age doesn't matter, actually. Para bang...
Teka lang,
it's
walang
a matter of...
pinag-uusapan na age,
Oo, hindi ko pinag-uusapan yung physical age, yung age ng content ng newspaper. Yan ang alam mo. But alam mo, I think isa sa mga nakikita ko ngayon sa business community, a lot of people are, because of this pandemic, we are 1 year na. They're either in hibernation. Park muna tayo dito, park
Yeah.
muna. Yung iba naman,
Yeah.
wala na, quits. Quit na. Surrender, white flag. Okay. The others naman I see is actually go go go.
Yeah.
Where would
Yeah.
Manila Times be, Klink, in this, if I'm right in this kind of observation?
Well, yeah, I think you are because we've seen newspapers close during the pandemic. Um, I know because I've hired some of them who lost, people who lost their jobs. I've seen people, newspapers are also, as you said, nag-park muna, right? Diba? They're lying low. By parking low, I mean that they're still coming out with a newspaper, but only online. I think for a while there were a few newspapers like that did not actually print a physical copy, but were just sustaining the website. But not Manila Times. Manila Times, we saw it as our responsibility to really continue printing. Mind you, we were not, to be honest with you, not 100% sure about this because there were members of the staff, and rightly so, who were afraid of COVID, and in fact, many of our staff ended up contracting COVID. But fortunately for us, all of them except one was mild, but even the severe one was able to recover. So we were go go go. In fact, even during the pandemic, we hired people. As I said, we hired video editors, reporters, editors. We saw this as an opportunity to in a sense, uh, well, we see that the number of our competitors were declining. So we took this as an opportunity to advance. And even our bigger competitors were scaling back because of the problem. And so I decided to pounce on it. Like I said, we weren't all 100% on the same page, but I insisted on that, and then sure enough, I think it's paying off for us. I've been telling our staff that if only we can survive, I think Manila Times will be better off after the pandemic than it was before the pandemic. So just survive, but I think we've done a little bit more than that. We've expanded our coverage, our capabilities, our delivery content. So yeah, we're go go go, and it's I would like to say, I don't think you can actually credit our management skill. It's just, we had a different, set of challenges than the other publications. So
Yeah.
again, maybe you could say luck had something to do with it.
Right, right. So, Kernan, you have one question that you want to
Yeah.
ask her.
Well, yeah, with your no, with your access to information, published and unpublished, more likely you have a lot of information that coming in that you're not allowed to publish. No, what
Mm.
topic interests you nowadays? No, what do you research recently, and what do you think na yung next trend sa business or even what locally, globally, in your opinion?
Wow, it's uh, are you talking about business in general or opportunities for, let's say, the news business?
Business in general, and perhaps also in your term as well, in
Oh,
your
well, one thing we're seeing with the pandemic is an acceleration of the development of the digital economy. I think we were headed there, right? But I think the pandemic accelerated many things. Uh, I don't have the figures handy, but I understand that, for example, e-commerce has increased, right, quite substantially. And and then this is true even with the underdevelopment of our digital infrastructure, our slow internet speed, right? So this is already happening. So I think um, I was telling our guys that we won't go back to the way it was before. Um, and so that's something that businessmen would want to keep in mind, not to have maybe the trappings of a typical business. A good friend of mine, for example, has this successful public relations firm with an office in Makati, and she was telling me that since the pandemic, they let go of the office because of the rental cost. Right, they're now operating from home, and business is better than ever. For the Manila Times, we frowned on people working from home before the pandemic because we want them, you know, to want to make sure that they're really working, right? They're not surfing the internet, right? But it dawned on us that I announced to my staff that I'm willing to continue the work from home arrangement for many of our staff indefinitely. And so our gauge has become productivity. Where are you more productive? Are you productive at home, or are you productive at the office? Right, and many of them are more productive at home because they don't have to contend with traffic, with parking, and but of course the drawback is they tend to have more meetings, right? The work tends to be more demanding at home, so they have to balance that out. So, and of course there are some staff members of ours who
Mm-hmm.
have to address mental issues as well. If they can't be at home, they don't function well isolated, so we bring them to the office. So the way we decide is, if we can pick you up, then you work in the office. If we can't pick you up, then you decide whether you work from home.
So, how young are your staff now, Klink? In terms of the people you are
Yeah.
part of the team of Manila Times, how young are they?
Well, the reporters naturally have to be young, but that's a young man's profession. Hindi ko yung ginagawa nila. I don't think I can keep up with many of them. I, I certainly couldn't do the things I used to do before. So the reporters tend to be very young, 20s, 30s, with outliers, of course. No? Uh, but the editors tend to be in their 40s and 50s. Again, with outliers.
Mm-hmm.
Because even as editors, where you don't have to go out and chase people down, right? The daily grind, the pressure. Some people thrive in it. Some people suffer from it. So it depends. The people who tend to stay tend to be those who thrive on stress and deadlines. They find
Yeah,
that exhilarating.
yeah, it is a stressful job, alam mo, Kernan. But isa sa mga I think one of the things that I see now is there's so much news in this whole
Hmm.
world
Yes.
that sometimes people are they just don't know who to follow.
Overwhelmed. Yeah.
Meron bang mga informative news? Meron diyan yung mga ano mo naman yung advert news,
Fake news.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mga
fake news.
fake
Yeah.
news. May mga yung pampakaba na news.
Yeah.
How do you are in media for the longest time, and you even have this Manila College.
Yeah.
How do you now advise people, our viewers, how to discriminate in terms of having the right news information?
Well, let me address fake news first. Now, fake news is not new. It's been around for centuries. In fact, na, no? I remember there was I think in early 19th century there was a famous story published, a series of stories published, I think in the New York Post, about this guy using a telescope. He saw people living on the moon, and it was a sensational story. It actually brought up the circulation of that newspaper by thousands. No, no. And of course, it was not real, di ba? And so this is now compounded, as you said, by the fact that there's so many sources now of information, and it seems overwhelming at times. Diba? May iba-iba yung Twitter. I have to mute my my Viber feed, my Twitter feed because I wouldn't be able to sleep. No, and I'm sure many people are the same way. And I think um, number one, I think this is where newspapers will be more appreciated, right? So again, it goes to branding. So you look at the sources of information. Of course, there are generics, right? Influencers, the social media, and some websites. But if you want information, if people want information that is vetted, that was reported using professional standards, that's when you would go to New York Times, Manila Times, Inquirer, Star, GMA, di ba? You will go to the known brands, right? So I guess that's one way for people to check or to verify. When our former president died, I was seeing messages. Totoo ba to? Totoo ba to? And of course, people were going to the traditional news sites, including ours. We had a big spike that day. We were the first to break, I think, the news that the President Aquino had passed away, and so we saw a thousand-fold increase in our web traffic that day. And so that's one. I think people will eventually learn where to get reliable information. There have been 100 years of media studies, no, beginning with they call the hypodermic needle theory. When people were seeing going to cinemas for the first time, there was a concern where children particularly would be influenced by what they see on the cinema screen. So they call this the hypodermic needle theory. Parang in-inject mo directly to the brain kung ano yung isipin nila. And we've learned over the years, and the studies have been going back and forth about the true measure of media's influence. And I remember in the 80s when violent content was the concern of diba, rock and roll videos, of even 90s pa pala yun. 80s and 90s videos, movies, they were very violent. And then so there was a concern about children. Then I saw, the studies show that, well, children spent many hours watching TV. There was a correlation between the hours they spent on TV and then their performance in school. But they also showed an ability to determine what was uh, commercial content, advertising, and other content. So at a young age, because perhaps they were exposed so much that they adapted, and I think that's what will happen. In the past, diba, our mother said, you believe it if you read it, diba? But now if you read it, it could be fake news. So I think we adapt, right? And my father's generation, our parents' generation, say they believe it if they see it on TV. And then we saw on TV, it can be faked also. And now with deep fakes, diba, you can't really tell sometimes. So that's where I think the value of news organizations will be better appreciated because there's so many available sources, as you said. But I think only a few will be reliable. Sorry, I talked too much.
No,
So,
no. A question, Klink,
mm.
about business. No, any tips you can give to the business owners? No, that how to utilize mass media, no, to their benefit in terms of course, growing their business, perhaps advertising, ba, or are there any like tips you can give about it?
Yeah, well, I'm surprised that there are a lot of people, even business people we know, Kernan, who are just not. I would call media literate. Sometimes I would get an inquiry. Pwede mo bang ilabas tong press release namin? Tsaka magkano ba yan? I get frustrated. We don't pay payments for press releases, right? So there's sponsored content if you want that advertising, and if you want a certain message or an open letter to come out, that comes out as an ad, diba? But press releases are statements that have a public concern. So those things are our duty to report if we see that they're newsworthy. Now, how can businessmen tap um, or use media to grow their business? Well, of course, you need to support. You need to support news organizations by way of ads. Now, in the past, I think before pandemic, that was prohibitive for many smaller players because a full page ad, similar to a 30-second commercial, is pretty expensive, diba? But I think the good thing now, because of media's entry into social media and to other platforms, there are now other offerings available that are more siguro reachable, more reasonable for smaller players. And you know, diba, the metrics for determining the cost in social media and elsewhere in the internet is different, diba? When you compare it to traditional advertising. Kasi space ang pinag-uusapan yon. So ito yung cost. Whereas sometimes in the internet, you have metrics. So the cost is determined by how many click-throughs, how many page views, diba? So it becomes more reasonable for many businesses. And I would encourage the business leaders, of course, to look at Manila Times. We have many things that we can offer them. We can still, of course, offer the traditional one, but we have variety now that we can offer. And I think fair to say that even my competitors, Manila, have something similar, but
Right.
I think we just do it better.
So maganda yung sinabi ni Klink, no? Media literacy in a scale of 10, where are you? Hindi ba? Kasi
Yeah.
marami kasi yung sinasabi, labas mo si Diaryo, bayaran mo na lang yan, di ba? Yung bang,
Correct.
mukhang mali ata yung
Okay, hindi po pwede yung suhulan eh.
Oo.
Correct.
Ay, lalo-lalo na, no? So, again, Klink, bakit kayo nagtayo ng Manila Times College? What was the reason for that?
That was a partly necessity kasi we were back in the late 90s, early 2000s. We had a newspaper. I came back from the States. We have my dad set up a newspaper. We were trying to hire people. And of course, the better graduates were going to the Inquirer, they were going to ABS, going to GMA, the Star, the Bulletin, diba? We couldn't get we couldn't get good people, and so we decided, why don't we? The people we got needed also training, so we were since we're going to be training people, why don't we set up our own training program? And that was how it started, and eventually it evolved into a new business, which was the Manila Times School of Journalism back then. Later, it became the Manila Times College. And so the whole point of that was basically to have an accredited program offering a bachelor's degree in journalism. And then in the end, after they graduate, after 4 years, they work for Manila Times. Many of them, of course, work for Manila Times, but I think we did it too well. Butch, masyado kaming magaling yata doon kasi they ended up working for the Inquirer, they ended up working for ABS. ABS-CBN, they were with Manila Bulletin, we're with the Star.
Yeah.
So when I go to events, I see my former students working for the other newspapers, and I'm happy for them. And I think it's validation that we did something well. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we had to close our Manila campus. Kasi in Manila, we were just offering one degree, but we still have the Subic campus because that campus has a basic ed program. And there was a hospital there, so we were also offering radio tech, nursing tech. I think they were applying for a license to offer medicine on that campus. And of course, they still have journalism.
Yeah. O, Kernan, ano ang say mo ngayon? Mukhang marami kang natutunan ngayon, Kernan. No? Parang naging media literate na rin tayo ata, no? Para bang na-correct natin.
Ang daming pwedeng pag-usapan pero we're really lack of time, no? But Sir Butch, siguro you can ask Sir si Klink, no?
Ang dami kasi
last
nagme-message
question
sa akin, paano raw mag-subscribe sa Manila Times, paano raw makontak si Mr. Klink dahil daw na-inspire sila sa mga sinabi mo. At paano nga ba, Klink? How do they establish connection with you and Manila Times?
Yeah.
Well, Manila Times has a website, www.manilatimes.net. That has information about how to subscribe to our newspaper. If you want to subscribe to the newsletter, which is a digested format, that's free. You can do that from our website. You can also see there's a link there for our digital edition. Our digital edition is quite interesting because it's in online you don't get to appreciate sometimes the news value because the format is different. So pag maikli yung storya, you tend to dismiss it. It's not that important. But if you see it in print, banner story pala yung maikling story na yan. Which is the case, for example, with the passing of President Aquino. Diba? Noong una kasi, breaking, 1-2 paragraphs lang yon. So baka isipin mo maliit lang na storya, but it's actually the story of the day. And I expect the story of the next coming weeks. So there's information there where you can contact us. Ang agent ko is walang iba kundi si Colonel Motomol. So you can reach me through him. But I'm on Facebook as is Manila Times. I'm on Twitter.
Yeah.
Instagram. Nasa
Just search online.
Yeah.
You search online and
search yung makulit. Yun, lalabas na kaagad yung Klink.
Yeah. Basta you become a member of Rotary Club Makati North, you will always see these two young handsome gentlemen beside me. So, di ba? So, okay, so final word na sa'yo for our countrymen, for our entrepreneurs, especially for MSME, Klink. The final
Thank
word.
you, Klink, for coming.
Thank you. Well, thank you again, Butch, Kernan, for the opportunity to be on your program. I hope that we can collaborate on other things later on, including the thing I mentioned to you earlier. I think it's important for our people to read and be abreast of all of the important things that are happening not only across our country but around the world. The world is becoming smaller and smaller because of the internet and now because of social media. And I think it's more important now not only to be informed but to understand what's going on. So we at Manila Times are striving to supply that because we see our role not only limited to informing people but helping people understand why things are happening, and in doing so, hopefully enable them to make better decisions. In a number of things in their lives. Including business. There are a number of changes happening extremely rapidly in the macro environment, and of course, newspapers will be the go-to place to learn about these developments. And not only with our content, but increasingly you see Manila Times now organizing events where we bring in people so that the audience can have a first-hand access to leading figures and personalities. We have a couple of events coming up. For example, we have next week we have a forum on energy, and one of the keynote speakers there will be Senator William Gatchalian. And so it would be good for people to hear, what are the policies being crafted in the Senate, right? So you don't have to hear it from a filter like us, right? So we, of course, appreciate the value of people who need the digested format, and that's what we provide. But we also are creating opportunities for our audiences to have access, as I said, to different people. And then we have an economic briefing after that, and there we will be featuring, the central bank governor and other people who give an assessment of the economic situation. Again, we will be reporting that on our newspaper, on our website, on our digital edition, on our social media. But of course, people and people who watch YouTube will see the full program there, and hopefully through those means they can find nuggets of information that I think that hopefully will be helpful to their particular situation and maybe to their businesses. So maraming salamat sa usapang business.
Maraming salamat.
And alam mo, ewan ko, marami talagang magre-replay nito kasi this one is going to be live, this will be replayed, and hopefully we also want to connect with YouTube of Manila Times and
Sure.
so that the more people, kasi itong usapang business na ito, Klink, katuwaan lang namin ni Klink, ni Kernan, dahil wala kaming magawa. Pero alam mo,
Ang alam ko, yung misis ko, i-replay to at least 10 times eh.
alam ko yan eh. Palagay ko yung your staff. And really, we never realized that something like usapang ganito, naging seryoso. Dumami na yung mga nagpapaimbita, dumami na yung mga topics, no? So, but again, it's something we all start from a hobby, but it becomes something like a stewardship too,
Sure.
as you say, di ba? So,
Passion,
yeah, we're really privileged to have Klink because sabi ko kay Kernan, sabi niya last week, sino imbitahin natin? Sabi ko, I'll challenge you. Si Dante Klink.
ang sabi sa akin ni Kernan wala nang tumanggap si Klink na lang.
Thank you,
na
Klink.
yan.
Thank you.
Kaya believe ako kay Kernan dahil sa isang tawag lang sinabi raw
Kernan
Kailan?
is my president in the Rotary Club of Makati North. So I cannot say to Kernan. Pag sinabi ni Kernan, jump, I say, how high?
Salamat, Klink. I'll tell you how high later.
Okay. So magiging blockbuster naman siguro itong ating naging usapang business, no? At kagaya last time we featured also Julie's Bake Shop, 40 years and third generation. It's really something to really uphold our MSMEs, Alam mo naman, kailangan natin iangat ang mga negosyante, di ba?
Right.
Yeah.
Again, thank you very much. Sa Usapang Business, we have taken a lot of your time, Klink, and really thank you for sharing to the country and keep on that stewardship, that legacy.
Pleasure is mine, Butch, Kernan. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.